The Wild. Nigel, Bridget, Kazar, Samson and Ryan, Larry, Benny. Ryan was a lion cub who lived in a large zoo in New York City with his father Samson, Benny the squirrel, Bridget the giraffe, Nigel the koala bear, Larry the snake, and a whole lot of other animals. Little Ryan was born in the zoo and had never lived in the wild. He longed to be as fearless as his father, and he tried hard to copy Samson's mighty roar. But all he could manage was a squeaky growl. Ryan was very embarrassed by it. Samson was always telling incredible tales of the times when he lived in the wild. Ryan had heard the stories so often that he knew them by heart. It would be so great if he could grow up to be a fierce lion, too. He knew that if he could only go to the wild, he could learn to roar like his dad. But Samson didn't agree. "We've got everything we need here," he said. Life at the zoo wasn't so bad. When the gates closed at sundown and all the human visitors had gone, the animals snuck out of their enclosures and had lots of fun. One night, all the animals rushed over to the penguins' place to play one of their favorite games. Turtle curling. Samson and his team were up against the penguins. The penguins may have been in their element, whizzing across the ice, but Samson's team had a few tricks of their own. They used Larry the snake like a catapult to launch the turtles with great accuracy and power. Samson's team was more than a match for the penguins. Meanwhile, Ryan was hanging out with his friends Duke and Ez. Ryan wanted to stay out of trouble, but Duke and Ez persuaded him to go and tease the gazelles. They crept and they leapt, and the gazelles fled in terror. To Ryan's horror, the startled gazelles fled to the penguin enclosure and right out onto the ice, ruining the curling game. What a mess! Yeah. Samson was furious with Ryan, who felt very ashamed of himself. He feared he would never grow up to be a proud and courageous lion like Samson. If only I could get to the wild, then I would learn to be big and strong, just like my dad, he thought. Then Ryan spotted some boxes loaded into a truck parked on the other side of the fence. Earlier that day, the pigeons had told Ryan that those boxes were due to be shipped to the wild. Ryan had an idea. He would hide inside one of the boxes and sail off to the wild. Then, after a while, he would come back to the zoo big and strong and with a mighty roar. His father would be so proud of him. So Ryan climbed over the fence and hid himself in a box. Soon after the truck was on the move, Ryan began to feel bad. Oh no, he thought to himself, what have I done? He really was on his way to the wild. He didn't like the thought of being so far from his dad. Dad, help me, get me out of here, he yelled. Samson he heard his son's cries and ran to the fence. He would have done anything to save his son. I must save Ryan, he cried. He'll never survive in the wild all by himself. Samson, Nigel, Benny, Larry, and Bridget set off immediately in search of Ryan. Somehow, the group of friends had to find their way across New York and all the way to the harbor. After some quick thinking, they hid inside a dust cart that was headed out of the zoo. Benny was confident that he could find his way through the enormous city. We ditched this truck on Fifth Avenue. Coppola lefts, Coppola rights, bada boom. Past Broadway and bam, you're there, he told his friends. Soon the truck stopped and the animals found themselves in the middle of New York. It was a stunning sight. All around them were huge skyscrapers, taller than anything they'd had seen. But finding their way across New York was trickier than they thought. The animals ran through alleyways and into the sewer system until at last they reached the harbor where Ryan's ship was about to sail. Follow that ship, Samson cried. The group stormed on deck of a small boat, making the poor captain at the wheel flee in terror. But it isn't easy for animals to use human machines, and it took the friends a long time to figure out how to steer the little boat. Before long, however, they were hot on the heels of the ship that was taking Ryan to the wild. The zoo animals were heading off on the biggest adventure of their lives. After a long and eventful voyage, they both arrived at a small island. Nigel, Benny, Bridge, and Larry looked expectantly at Samson. What should they do now? But Samson didn't know what to do. The truth was, Samson wasn't from the wild at all. He had made up all those exciting tales because he wanted to impress everyone, especially little Ryan. That really made the other animals panic. Help! We want to go home, they shouted and ran back towards the boat. In the confusion, Samson took a deep breath and went into the jungle in search of his son alone. Benny didn't like the idea of leaving his friend Samson alone on a strange, wild island. So he convinced the others to stay and help. But where had Samson got to? But before they could start searching, they were surrounded by a mob of unfriendly, sharp horned wild beasts. The evil creatures forced their friends into a dark and scary cave. Then, to everyone's amazement, they crowned Nigel just like a king. What on earth was going on? Khazar, the leader of the wild beasts, stepped forward. He explained that they believed Nigel was their god and added that they were tired of always being lion food. Now, instead, they would be the predators and they had decided to start with Larry and Bridge. But first, we'll cook you, Kaza said, as if that were any consolation. Larry gulped all the way down his long snake neck. Meanwhile, on the other side of the island, Samson heard Ryan crying for help. At last, he had tracked down his son. Samson raced over and found Ryan surrounded by hungry vultures. But just one look at the fully grown lion was enough to make them take off. Dad, thank goodness you found me, Ryan cried happily. It felt so good to be reunited. Then, all of a sudden, Khazar's mob of wild beasts came charging into view. Run, son, Samson shouted nervously. Ryan was confused. Why should we run, Dad? You're the king of the wild. Chase them away. I'll explain later if I get the chance, said Samson as he lifted his son into a tree to safety. I am sorry, Ryan. I lied to you, said Samson. The truth is, I have never been in the wild before today. I was born in a circus and my own father was always angry with me because I couldn't roar loudly or be brave like him. That's why I wanted you to be proud of me. Ryan felt so disappointed when he heard his father's confession. Samson and Ryan climbed down the tree and ran away as quickly as they could, but the wild beasts were faster. Soon their angry pursuers caught up with them and forced Samson off a cliff. Poor Ryan was surrounded. The mob of wild beasts herded him towards the cave entrance. After a while, the wild beasts pushed Larry and Bridge into the big cave where Nigel was standing on his throne. All around them, the wild beasts were getting ready to eat the zoo gang. Nigel didn't know what to do. How could he stop the mad wild beasts? Luckily, Samson had found the entrance to the cave and rushed in to rescue Ryan and the others. Come on, Dad! Ryan yelled excitedly when he saw Samson. Let's show these jerks who's at the top of the food chain. Father and son stood shoulder to shoulder, facing the herd of wild beasts surrounding them. Just then, Khazar appeared. He lowered his horn and crashed into Samson, knocking him to the ground. Little Benny looked at his injured friend. We've got to do something to help Samson, he shouted. The zoo gang had to figure out what to do and fast, and they didn't disappoint. Just like at the curling game, they stretched Larry the snake between two rocks and used him as a catapult to shout Ryan towards Kazar, knowing him over. That was just the break that Samson needed. Now was the time for him to prove that even though he wasn't from the wild, he could be fearsome and powerful. Samson let out a roar so mighty that it knocked Khazar off his feet and made the cave collapse on top of him. Roar! Likely everyone else got out in time. Wow, said Ryan. This is going to be your best story ever, Dad. The animals set sail for New York. Ryan was proud of his father now. Samson had proved that you don't have to be born in the wild to be courageous. Any lion with a truly brave heart can have a loud and mighty roar. And of course, Samson was more proud of Ryan than ever.